when I had the meeting with the consultant, she was just like, it's just bad luck, just keep trying. And I just thought, oh my gosh, if you carry on doing the same thing, you're going to get the same result. So that's when I started researching into PCOS, and I discovered that if you have PCOS, you probably have poor egg quality. And I became obsessed, as that's the reason why I kept having miscarriages. And that's when I came across myo-inositol, and I bought some. It was a powder and I kept forgetting to take it. And that's when the kind of light bulb moment came of, why doesn't someone make this in a tablet? To start a business where it means something, where it comes from a place of wanting to help other people. I know what I went through, and it was so awful. And I just thought, if I'm going through this, there must be so many other women going through this. All we want to feel is normal. I don't think it's too much to ask, is it?
I listened to a podcast recently that said about successful businesses often come from like pain or passion. And if you can merge both, they're destined to be successful. And I think that shines through all of like the branding, the communities that you try to build. And I think it really shows. And also why we started this podcast. Hello.
Hello.
So it's our first episode of the Founders Flow podcast.
How long has it taken for us to finally get here, Chloe?
I know.
It's been a journey.
It really has. But like, I feel like so needed. Like this sort of, topic, like we are so passionate about it. And when we meet up, all we ever do is just talk. It just makes sense to put it in a podcast.
Well, I think when you talk to any woman who's started their own business, you quickly get onto, hormones and your cycle and how you feel affects your energy levels and your motivation and everything. So, I think it's a good topic to talk about.
Yeah, and also on that, also a topic that we don't talk about. Do you know what I mean? I don't know about you, but I still have conversations with my friends where I'm like, oh my God, me too. As if like, how have we not spoken about this before?
Absolutely. And it still happens. I mean, yeah, all of my friends. I mean, I've got friends who are varying ages from younger to much older. And, I think especially the older women that I speak to, there's so much they didn't talk about, and I think it's our obligation to highlight all these issues that women go through, especially with menopause. And, even if you're not there yet, it's good to know that it's coming and how to deal with it. And actually, it's not as bad as everybody says. And there are ways to deal with it. But that goes for so many other hormonal issues. And we just don't talk about it. And it's just really important that we open the conversation.
Absolutely. And I think there is such a shift now, isn't there? Like we are seeing a shift. We're seeing so many people talking about it, Davina McCall, so many other influencers talking about cycles and things. And I think it's brilliant. But I guess we wanted to start a podcast that spoke to the women that have been in this for years, right? Like you and I have both been talking about this for years and years. And while it's incredible that more of the world are talking about it, there's still areas that we're not necessarily talking about. And for the first episode, I feel like we should give everyone the lowdown about a little bit about us as both female founders, and both very passionate about our cycle. So I'm going to pass the baton to you. Can you tell everyone a little bit about you?
Yeah, where shall I start? So my journey with my unpredictable hormones started when I was 19. I was having a period like every 2 weeks, every 6 weeks, every 8 weeks. I didn't know what was going on. I finally went to the doctors, and they did the blood test and told me that I had PCOS. This was quite a long time ago. So you're talking, oh my goodness, over 25 years ago. Oh my gosh. So that we did just have the internet actually, but it wasn't something that I would have gone on to find information. It wasn't really, there wouldn't have probably been any information on there at that point, to be honest. But so when I did find out I had PCOS, all I was told was, you find it difficult to have children. And I was absolutely devastated. I remember going home to my boyfriend, crying my eyes out, thinking it was the end of the world. Not that I was planning on having children. I was at university at the time. But you kind of look at the symptoms, and it's, excess hair on the face and body, being overweight, infertility, irregular periods, acne. And it's so overwhelming. And the doctor didn't tell me that you wouldn't have all of these symptoms. And every woman doesn't have every symptom when it comes to PCOS. So yeah, so it was a massive shock. And there was no aftercare. And I kind of, to be honest with you, after that, I kind of put it to the back of my mind. I carried on with the irregular periods, and I had a real issue with my weight all through my 20s. I found it incredibly difficult to maintain a healthy weight. I was never particularly massively overweight, but I was constantly on a diet, and that triggered a lot of eating issues for me. Not necessarily, I didn't fully have it in a full eating disorder, but I had disordered eating, which still lives with me today. I'm having issues with it at the moment. So I think that could have been handled better had I known how I should be eating, if I'd have had a healthy attitude to food when I found out I had PCOS. So, you know, it's done is kind of magnified and kind of got worse, I guess, over the years, because I haven't been able to manage it properly. And I'm really trying, as we all are. We're all a work in progress, aren't we? But yeah, I think I just put it to the back of my mind. And it wasn't until I started having children, trying to have children in my kind of when I was 34, that it all came to the forefront again. And we just had an absolutely terrible time trying for a baby. You know, it took us 5 years and I had 6 miscarriages before we had our 2 children, thankfully, you know, thank the Lord. But it was a really difficult time, and I didn't really understand anything about my cycle. I didn't realize that you could only get pregnant within 5 days of your cycle. That's one thing that even I remember when I was trying for a baby and I was mid-30s then, and I tell my friends this, and they'd be like, no, you can get pregnant anytime. I'm like, no, honestly, the fertility doctors told me you can't.
It's wild, isn't it? Like, how do we not know this? Like, in school, we're told if you have sex, you're going to die.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you will get pregnant and you will die.
It's all about not getting pregnant, you know.
Absolutely.
They don't tell you how to get pregnant. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it was the worst thing ever, wasn't it? Like, getting pregnant, if you, in sex education, getting pregnant, you get pregnant at any time, and it's going to be the worst thing. And if you don't get pregnant, then you're going to get an STI, and that's just even more worse. So
yeah, it could have saved me a lot of stress and trauma throughout my 20s, I think. You know, the times where you think, oh my gosh, I'm pregnant, and there was absolutely no chance in a million years I could fall pregnant at that point in my cycle.
I remember taking myself to the toilet and pressing my stomach because I was so scared that I was pregnant. Like, I was a teenager at the time. Like, how awful is that I was not made to feel empowered, that even if I did get pregnant, that there was going to be support there. It was literally just like, if you get pregnant, that's the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
So after your miscarriages, take us from that journey.
So eventually I found a fertility doctor that specialized in natural killer cells. So his work revolves around testing women to find out if they have high natural killer cells in their body. And this means that your body almost rejects the pregnancy. So it sees the pregnancy as a foreign object in your body and just tries to get rid of it. And so I had that. And the good thing was, he said to me, because obviously at that point I was 39. So I was obviously panicking about my fertility and my, you know, how many eggs I had and all of those things and the quality of my eggs, because I was reaching 40 and you're always told, you know, your fertility falls off a cliff after 35, which he said isn't true. And he also said, which made me feel a lot better, if you have PCOS, he said you can carry on having children until you're 45 if you wanted to, because you've got so many follicles. And if you're using something like ovulation stimulant drug like Clomid, which I used one called Lesotrol, I think it was called, because if you use Clomid when you've got PCOS, it can cause multiple pregnancies, because I think it just stimulates the ovaries a bit too much. But yes, he said you can carry on having children. You don't panic. But so anyway, we eventually had our 2 children through this fertility doctor, and I took steroids from the time that I had sex until the time that I did the pregnancy test. If it was positive, I carried on taking the steroids for, I think, the first 12 weeks. And if it was negative, I stopped taking the steroids and I'd go towards the next cycle. So it was a really long process. And actually, going back to the reason why we started this podcast and sort of looking at female founders and how we run our businesses and run and have a family if we do have a family, or deal with all these hormonal issues that we had. I mean, the amount of doctor's appointments I had, I was running my business at the time, not MyOva, a different business, but I don't know how I would have facilitated all of those doctor's appointments had I not worked for myself. I mean, it was a really long journey, and some once every 4 weeks I had to have oh gosh, I can't remember what they're called now, but it was like an egg white solution, intralipids they were called. And I had to have those every 4 weeks up until 16 weeks. And that took 4 hours, you know, and then you've got the journey time on top of that. So it's really hard for women, you know, if you're going through some kind of issue with your fertility or pregnancy, or, you know, endometriosis, or anything that requires you to have time off work. It's really hard. It's really hard. So I really feel for those women who are going through that and having to maintain a job and maybe have other children to look after. It's really difficult.
I'm also a big believer, and I know this isn't possible for everyone. I am fully aware of this, but like the 9 to 5 just isn't built for the female body to be able to cope with anyway. So from there, let's talk about you finding MyOva and the fact that you are a female founder within the women's health space. Give us a little lowdown on that.
Yeah. So when I was going through all those miscarriages, after the 4th miscarriage, which I don't even want to call it a miscarriage because it was almost 19 weeks and I had to give birth to my baby. So yeah, having that being called a miscarriage just doesn't sit right with me. It was a baby loss, or, you know, and at that point, I think they've moved the date forward, but your baby wasn't counted as an actual baby or a birth until 24 weeks, I think. But yeah, when you're going through it and you're on the labour ward, and I was in labour for 17 hours, so it was pretty awful. But after that they do all the tests, like the blood test, to find out whether you've got any genetic issues or there's any reasons why that you are having all these miscarriages and you know, losing these babies. And it came back and nothing was wrong, like zero. And in a way, I wanted them to find loads of things wrong with me, because if they found there's something wrong, they could give me the drugs, they could fix it, and I could have a baby. But you're kind of left with no answers. And when I had the meeting with the consultant, she was just like, you know, it's just bad luck, just keep trying. And I just thought, oh my gosh, if I carry on like this, you know, if you carry on doing the same thing, you're gonna get the same result, right? So that's when I started researching into PCOS, and I discovered that if you have PCOS, you probably have poor egg quality. And I became obsessed, as that's the reason why I kept having miscarriages. And that's when I came across myo-inositol. And there's just, you know, if anyone wants to check it out, there's loads of studies out there showing its effectiveness at treating the different symptoms of PCOS. And I bought some, and, you know, I was taking, well, it was a powder, and I kept forgetting to take it. And that's when the kind of light bulb moment came of, why doesn't someone make this in a tablet? Oh, I'll make it in a tablet. I've always been quite entrepreneurial, and I think it's really important for most people, but for me, to start a business where it means something, where it comes from a place of, you know, wanting to help other people. And I know what I went through, and it was so awful. And I just thought, if I'm going through this, there must be so many other women going through this, so many other women that are stuck or just going around, you know, the NHS in circles, because, you know, we've all been there when we've been turned away 5 times, and you go away thinking you're mad, you know, is there something wrong with me? Is it in my head? You know? So I think for so many women, MyOva is a really easy solution for them, that's natural, where they don't have to go and get a doctor's appointment, that actually works, that you know, so they can feel back to their normal self. That's all we want to feel, is normal. We just don't want to be, you know, we don't want to, I don't think it's too much to ask, is it? It's not too much to ask to have a normal cycle, to like not have hair on your face, to have, you know, no acne, you know, to feel comfortable in your clothes. You know, that's all we want, really. So that's how it started, really. And so I think that year I birthed a child and the business. and then I think 6 months after my first son was born, I was like, oh my gosh, we need to start trying again, because I really wanted to have 2 babies and I didn't know how long it was going to take. I didn't know if I was going to end up having another couple of miscarriages, but we ended up finding out about my second the week after my first son's birthday. So first birthday. So I ended up
Wow,
having
you had your hands full.
had 2 children in 20 months. So and started a business, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, guys, hold fire, because next week's episode is all around maternal mental health. And I think we're going to have to speak to Leila quite a bit about that. You have been
I've got a lot to say about that.
yeah, you have been through such a journey. And I think, you know, I listened to a podcast recently that said about like successful businesses often come from like pain or passion. And if you can merge both, then they're going to be like, they're destined to be successful. And I think, you know, you went through so much pain, but you also have so much passion in making sure that other women with PCOS don't have to go through what you did. And I think that shines through all of like the branding, the WhatsApp groups, the communities that you try to build. And I think it really shows. Also why we're starting this podcast, right? Like we want to share those stories, and we want people to make people feel as if they're not alone. And also, even if you do have PCOS, or, you know, you're going through some sort of women's health issue right now, there is some form of like beauty that can be caused from that. So like, you know, we wouldn't have MyOva today if you hadn't have gone through all of that pain. And I think, you know, sometimes when you're in the midst of that pain, it's really, really hard to see any form of light. But, you know, I guarantee that when, you know, you were starting out your fertility journey, you didn't think you were about to birth a whole business around women's health either.
No, absolutely. And it's funny because I've thought about this a lot, and it was really painful what I went through. I mean, I hit rock bottom. I don't think there were points in time when I remember talking to my mum and saying, I can't carry on. Like, I didn't even know if I wanted to carry on, full stop. It was my mental health was on the floor. And I look back on it now, and I've thought about it a lot over the last few years. Would I have changed any of it? And I wouldn't have changed it. Not only because I wouldn't have obviously had my 2 boys who are beautiful, adorable, lovely boys, and I wouldn't have had this business, but I wouldn't have changed it because I feel like it was my path, you know? And maybe the universe was like, Leila, you've got to set up this business. Okay, you're not listening. So, and it's almost like, okay, this is going to carry on until you do it. You know, I think we've all got
that. Gave me goosebumps.
I know. I do think that. I think
I do too.
You know, you get nudges, and they get louder and louder and louder until you actually can't ignore them, and then it's right in front of your face. So
absolutely,
yeah, I wouldn't change it. And also, that's what life's about, isn't it? It's about the good times and the bad times. You have to ride both of them out. Otherwise you're not really living.
Absolutely. And I think it's correct. And it also brought us 2 together.
It did, Chloe.
So I guess my journey is sort of like you were sort of later on, and mine was more in like the teens. So I'll rewind a few years, and I got into fitness. And interesting that, you know, you touched on the disordered eating, and I'm sure we could potentially do an episode around that in terms of like the pressures that females have. But I very much so I was around like 16 when I first got into the gym, and this was just the time that just Instagram had just started. So suddenly we had access to everyone's food, everyone's fitness. Like I was like I would literally go on womenshealthmagazine.com morning and evening to read their best, like latest released articles. I was so swamped in diet culture, eat less, move more, gym, low carb, low fat, everything, like no sugar. And it worked until it didn't. But I was on the pill, so I had no idea that actually this was harming me. I just thought, I actually remember sitting on the side of my bed thinking, I am exhausted. Is this really what people do to look like this? Like it amazed me that I was like, oh my God, am I going to have to do this for the rest of my life? But of course, I continued. Eventually, I came out of a really, really crappy relationship and felt really empowered. And I was like, nah, I'm coming off the pill, blah, blah. And again, I think it was the universe's way of nudging me to be like, look, you need to end it with him and you need to come off the pill, because then, I'm not joking, it literally was like, as soon as that I split up with him, my whole world opened up, and is why I do the work that I do now. It literally showed me that actually I didn't have a period for 2 years after coming off the pill, and that's from under eating and over exercising. I basically had too much stress in the body, that I had hypothalamic amenorrhea. I had to work with a dietitian. I had to work on my relationship with food and exercise to be able to bring my cycle back. I actually didn't think I could ever sort my head out with that, and I also still didn't know that I could even have children. Anyway, I just continued to work on. I was still having irregular periods, was still trying to work on my mindset, went to Glastonbury for the weekend, came home, and as a way to make me feel better, I ended up pregnant with my obviously new partner and fiance. We're getting married next year. And we now have a 10-month-old little boy.
Congratulations.
And we now have a 10-month, but I honestly didn't think that journey was ever going to happen for me. But also, what the hell? You lose your period, and also, what the hell? You lose your period and have all of these other signs. Like, what even is hormone imbalance? What even is a healthy cycle? What is ovulation? What should cervical mucus look like? What should your period look like? How do you feel at different stages of your cycle? I just like went down the rabbit hole of just learning as much as I can. And I cannot believe how little I knew about my own body. And then that led me to here, whereas I coach females, but also run a social media agency that basically creates content and helps with branding and marketing for other female founders within the women's health industry. And that's how we found each other, wasn't it?
It is. And that's an amazing story. And again, it's taking all that pain and turning it into something positive. Because I just think it's important. You have to do it because it just feels empowering. Otherwise, it's taking control of you, isn't it?
Yeah, I also think, and I feel like you probably feel similar, I can't have another teenage girl going through this. Like, I feel so angry about it that I'm like, no, how do we not know this stuff? Like, how do we not know, like we said earlier about how do we not know that you can't get pregnant every single day of your cycle?
Well, because they don't teach it at school, do they? I mean, they did put menstrual health on the national curriculum in 2020, I think. Where are we? 2025. I mean, please. And I think they're teaching it to boys now as well, which is really important because if you want to raise, well, I've got 2 boys, you've got a boy, it's our duty to make sure we raise, healthy minded, considerate, compassionate boys when it comes to female health, because the only people that are going to teach them that is us. So, for me, they don't have any sisters. They're probably going to go to a boys' school because that's the nearest one to where we live. So I've got a lot of work to do with those 2. But I really, yeah, I do. I mean, that's a whole other conversation. I'm really trying to use the correct terminology for body parts as well, because
Are you?
the only when you hear it, my 5-year-old, he can't say the word V, so he's like, "Mummy, is that your vagina?"
Oh, bless him.
But you know what? The thing is, right, those words are embarrassing because they were taught to us as embarrassing words, right?
Yeah, I was told Nunu growing up. That's what we called it. And it's like, how is that okay, but not the word vagina, which is like literally its scientific name?
Yeah, it's biological name. It's biological name.
It's literally like calling your leg like your, I don't know, boo-boo.
Absolutely. Well, do you know what? The thing is, he said to me, "Mummy, where did I come out?" And I said, "Oh, I did the thing, or you came out of my tummy." And he was kind of looking at my belly button going, "Really?" And I just thought, what? No, you didn't. You didn't. You came out of my vagina. Because, it's all age appropriate, but why not say that word, and penis? Why can't we say it? It's like,
Yeah, but even my partner, he won't mind me saying, I've pretty much told everyone because I found it so funny. I reckon I was about 7-8 months pregnant when he found out why we had a belly button.
Oh, really?
I was like, obviously the umbilical cord. And he was like, really? And I was like,
Oh,
doesn't that go to show like how even like a belly
yeah,
button that's like so not like, you know, that's not the vagina or the clitoris or whatever. Yet that it's something like it's connected to birth, yet we do, like no one talks. No one talks
no,
about it.
I know. And we need to educate men, really. And it's really important to educate men just because they're going to be your husband, your boyfriend, your co-worker, your boss, you know, and they need to understand women's cycles. They need to understand women's hormones and, you know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
because, and that's the thing. I mean, even touching on clinical studies that are all done on men, um, because women's hormones are too complicated and they can't be doing with it. You know, the scientific or clinical trials, it just makes it more complicated. So all these studies are done on men. So, you know, we're probably taking loads of drugs and things, and, you know, even probably over the counter stuff that actually is dosed for men, not for women.
But I even think, like, with men understanding it, like Tom's so open-minded about all of this. And I mean, he sort of had to be. He met me at the peak of my Instagram growing and me constantly talking about periods on the internet. But like him understanding where I'm at in my cycle helps him and our relationship like no other. Like if I could say, you know, he might know that this week Chloe's due on, maybe just let me have a minute if I need a minute. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Same here, same here. And as I'm now in perimenopause, my PMT is raging. It's through the roof, and I've never used to have it this bad, but I can feel it coming and the the anger rising, and I'm just like, I'm due on. He's like,
Yeah.
okay, back off slowly, back off slowly.
And I think as well, it's like it's not knowing as well, and like that being that like deep understanding that like we're not doing this to be a bitch. Like it's like you said, I also just like feel it rising, and there's just so there's only so many deep breaths I can do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's tough. It's tough. And I think it's also understanding your body. And once you start understanding your body, and also, you know, I'm on HRT. I've recently been prescribed testosterone, which has been an absolute game changer. Um, you know, and it's knowing that there are options out there to help. You just need to find the right doctor with the right dosage, and with, you know, perimenopause is a whole other conversation, but it's it's not something that ever is stable. So for every year or every few months, you're probably going to need to change your dosage, and it's tough. It's tough.
Yeah, and I hope that with this podcast it helps bring these stories. You know, we're hoping, guys, to that we're going to get guests on that talk us through HRT, testosterone, you know, even dealing with the mental health side of things, dealing with our hormones, how to live with our cycle. Like we're hoping that this podcast, as well as all of those inspiring voices and hearing other people's stories, that will also provide you with so much knowledge and education on how you can thrive within your cycle. And you don't have to be listening to this to then go on and start a business in female health or what, but hopefully this can just shine a light on more female businesses, more female founders, but also most importantly the cycle, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's just really important, and we all need to be more educated on it, really, don't we? It's just one of those things. It's just one of those things. And actually, to be honest with you, I'm probably going to learn a lot through this as well. So you know, when we're looking at all the episodes that we're going to be recording, it's like, oh, you know, especially with male mental health as well. That's something that's, you know, I probably don't know a huge amount about, to be honest, and having a guest on to tell us about it. So I'm really excited to learn as well. I think it's just a really good way to speak to some really like exciting, clever people, and
Yeah, from a selfish point, from two selfish points of view, we're buzzing.
Yeah, we're going to be like so on it, aren't we?
Yeah.
In about a year's time.
Yeah, literally. We're so knowledgeable. Guys, if you have any questions for us or anything like that, please head to @MyOva on Instagram. We'll be doing like sort of question boxes where you can send us questions. Also on there, you'll find the MyOva WhatsApp group, which you can come and join the community. There's a bunch of us in there just chatting about all things women's health, PCOS, that sort of thing. And of course, if you want to check out MyOva itself, head to the website. All the details will be down in the show notes, and there'll be some information there about myo-inositol. If you want to if you want to read up about that, and also about PCOS and things like that, you'll just find all of the details down into the show notes. And we shall see you next week for maternal mental health.
Great. Thank you, Chloe. That was great.